Chapter 86, Prayer. Suspension-style ritualistic magic referred to the termination of a ritual according to the Beyonder's judgment. They could finish other matters first before returning to continue the ritual. Even by doing so, it was still possible to gain the desired effects. This was a technique produced over 1,000 years of ritualistic magic development. After all, many high-level ritualistic magic required multiple steps. The duration ranged from an hour to half a day before finishing. It was difficult to ensure that no one disturbed them during the entire process, or that there wouldn't be any accidents. After gaining lessons from various predecessors through blood and tears, gaining feedback through each failure, being able to suspend ritualistic magic became mainstream at the higher levels, while it also indirectly affected the lower-level rituals. However, being able to suspend a ritual didn't mean that the ritual could be suspended at any time. One had to abide by mysticism theory and grasp the corresponding technique. If not, the failure of the ritual was unavoidable. It could even result in a terrifying backlash effect. Based on Klein's understanding, once one gained the attention of a particular divinity, and the divinity was waiting on the contents of the request, to suddenly say, "Wait, I need to use the bathroom," one can only be congratulated, since they might never need to go to the bathroom ever again. Phew! Klein heaved a sigh of relief as he composed himself. Even though he had held many luck enhancement rituals, and had even designed a corresponding ritual that made an attempt at justice and the hanged man, this was his first actual ritualistic magic that abided by the rules. After looking at the silver inlaid cane by the side of the bed, Klein picked up the third candle and placed it in the middle of the desk to represent himself. He placed the silver bowl that Selena used for rituals in front of the third candle and replaced the axe with a sacred emblem. On the left were extracts and essential oils of the moonflower, slumber flower, and other plants. While on the right, he placed a plate of salt, a small silver dagger, a piece of fake goat skin, and a quill that was dipped in ink. Luckily, Selena had a complete inventory. Otherwise, he wouldn't have had any way to complete the preparations. As for the moderately fast rituals that old Neil could perform, they were not something a seer could do.
From the looks of it, Selena is quite an experienced mysticism enthusiast. Yes, if she wasn't experienced, then she wouldn't have gotten into such trouble. She was only 16 and had been exposed to all of this for at least a year. Who had guided her?
Ideas flashed through his mind as he picked up Selena's cup from the bed. He poured plain water into it and placed it beside the coarse salt. He took out his pocket watch and popped it open. He didn't delay any further after taking a glance at it. He traced layers of the spherical light in his mind and quickly entered cogitation. The room that was filled with floral fragrance was suddenly subject to a formless whirlwind. Klein put away his pocket watch and his eyes suddenly turned darker, from brown to black, as though he could see through one's soul. He extended his palm and laid it against the candle on the top right corner. He chanted inwardly,
"Evernight goddess, you are the Lady of Crimson."
As Klein chanted, he extended his spirituality and rubbed the candle wick. After a couple of moments, the candle suddenly lit up, and there was a tranquil blue inside the dim yellow light.
"Evernight goddess, you are the Empress of misfortune and horror."
Just like he did before, Klein successfully lit up the second candle on the top left corner.
"I am your loyal guard, the shield that fends against danger in the dark night, and the long spear that stabs at evil in the silence."
Whoosh! The third candle that symbolized Klein began to burn. The flame was still. He picked up the small silver knife and mimicked old Neil's motions. He used incantations, coarse salt, and plain water to fulfill the purification. Then he let his spirituality that he had gathered spewed out from the tip of the silver dagger and naturally merged them as one. With the silver knife in hand, Klein walked around the bedroom, kneeling when he came to the bed, and sealed the area with a formless barrier. The light from the street lamp outside the window suddenly disappeared, but the red light was still shining through quietly. Klein returned to the study desk and picked up the quill. With spirituality and ink, he drew incantations and symbols to ward off misfortune. When all of that was finished, he put down the things he was holding. Then he trickled a drop of extract, flower essence, and essential oils on each of the 3 candles. Sizzle! A faint fog filled the room, which suddenly possessed an additional hint of mystery. Next, he burned a few types of herbs before taking a step back from the mixture of fragrances and began reciting the corresponding incantation in the suspension ritualistic magic.
Standing higher than the cosmos and more eternal than eternity, the Evernight Goddess, I pray for your loving grace. I pray for you to show your loving grace to a devout believer of yours. I pray for the power of the crimson. I pray for the powers of misfortune and horror. I pray that you will cleanse your devout believer, Selina Wood, from evil's corruption and be safe from danger. I pray that you would wait for a moment for that unfortunate girl. Moonflower, a herb that belongs to the red moon, please bestow your powers to my incantation. Slumber flower, a herb that belongs to the red moon, please bestow your powers to my incantation.
After reciting the incantation, Klein closed his eyes and repeated it 7 times in his heart. He saw that there was nothing out of the ordinary at the altar. He then lifted the silver dagger again and took a few steps back to the door of Selina's bedroom. He tapped his chest in 4 spots, forming the shape of the crimson moon. He then turned around and raised his silver dagger. Shate, half shate. His spirituality spewed out from the tip once again and sliced open the shape of a door in the formless wall. Klein knew that even if he opened the door at that very moment, it wouldn't affect the tranquility and holiness of the altar. He took out his silver vine-leaf pocket watch that had an intricate pattern. He checked the time and went through the process that was to happen in a few moments. In the living room on the 2nd floor, Elizabeth's body was quivering as she lifted her head from time to time to check the wall clock. She was counting down in silence under the illumination of the 2 gas lamps.
It's almost time.
As she spoke softly, she looked sideways at the lively girl with long wine-red hair. Her dimples were deep, her smile was bright, and she gossiped well with all the friends around her. But the more everything looked normal, the more terrified Elizabeth felt. The cold and terrifying Selina in the mirror seemed to be in her head, and she couldn't wipe the image away.
I can't wait anymore. I have to take action now.
Elizabeth suddenly stood up. Before everyone's shocked gazes, she smiled and said,
Selina, I have a surprise for you. Follow me out for a bit.
Really? Didn't you give me a birthday present already?
Selina flipped the mirror the other way around and stood up in surprise.
A surprise will not have any signs.
Elizabeth felt that she had no talent in acting at all. Without saying another word, she walked toward the bedroom door first. Selina followed behind with a confused smile. Melissa looked at her 2 best friends leaving and unconsciously knitted her eyebrows.
Elizabeth is acting so strange today. She started acting even stranger after she met Klein. She suddenly ran out earlier and said that she needed to use the bathroom. But why did she look so anxious?
Selina's bedroom entrance. Elizabeth took a deep breath and said to the girl in front of her,
Let's go to your room.
Elizabeth, you seem very nervous and afraid. Why?
Selina looked puzzled at her good friend as she noticed her body trembling constantly.
Excitement! Yes, excitement!
Elizabeth shot a glance at the mirror in Selina's hand as she turned half her body around to knock on the door with a long knock followed by 2 short, successive ones.
Why are you knocking on the door?
Selina was baffled even more. Creak! Her bedroom door opened. Dressed in his black tuxedo and half-top hat, Klein appeared in front of the 2 girls.
Pleasant surprise? This is a pleasant surprise?
Selina's mouth turned agape as she felt perplexed. At that moment, Klein suddenly reached out his hand and grabbed her by the wrist. He pulled her into the room as Elizabeth stood rooted to the ground. Simultaneously, Klein's silver dagger struck forward as it spewed out his spirituality, which quickly mended the door-shaped passage. The invisible spirituality wall sealed off the room, insulating Selena's screams within. Bang! Klein suddenly closed the door, and without even looking at Selena, he rushed to the desk. The wine-red-haired girl stopped screaming as she looked up and surveyed the room. Her gaze rapidly turned cold as her skin was mottled with paleness. Her fingers rapidly grew sharp fingernails, and at this moment Klein had already returned to his cogitation state. He trickled a drop of moonflower and essential oil onto each candle as he chanted loudly,
Supreme Lady of Crimson, great Empress of misfortune and horror, I pray for you to bestow your loving grace. Show your loving grace to the lost lamb, Selena Wood.
While chanting, he picked up the fake goatskin and pushed it onto the candle, representing the requester. Whoosh! He felt a cold wind blow behind him as an immense energy assaulted his body. The goatskin was ignited, and Klein threw it into a silver bowl. Then, he crouched downwards in accordance to his preparations to dodge the lethal strike. Whoosh! 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 The wind howled ferociously, and Klein felt the uncontrolled outpouring of his spirituality surging like the currents. He saw the goatskin burning in the tiny silver bowl, burning in silent darkness, and he heard heavy items landing on the ground behind him. Bam! Bang! The two sounds followed one after another with almost no breaks in between. Wisps of dark green gases plunged into the silver bowl and vanished into the illusory darkness. Klein rolled to the side and got up. He drew his revolver from his underarm holster. However, he saw that the adorable red-haired girl Selena had fallen to the ground, and the silver-coated mirror had shattered into countless broken pieces on the carpet. Those shattered pieces didn't reflect Selena but showed the ceiling and Klein's silhouette. Then, through the spirit vision he had left active, Klein saw the wicked dark green in Selena's aura had vanished completely. Everything returned to normal, but she seemed more frail. Phew! He had just relaxed when he felt a sharp, throbbing pain in his glabella and head. The sharp pain spread all over his body and made him want to roll around on the floor. Klein held his fists tight, and the veins on the back of his hands popped and became black. They looked like moving worms. Simultaneously, he heard silent screams and the whispers that ripped at his mind. It took him nearly 20 seconds to survive the ordeal. His forehead and vest was soaked in cold sweat.
The ritualistic magic I used sucked up all my spirituality and almost made my beyonder powers lose control.
Klein made a rough guess of the situation. That also made him notice that he had digested quite a bit of the remaining energy in the potion. Based on his calculations, if he had the strength at the time he consumed the potion, he believed that there was no way he could have survived the ordeal. He could have become a monster straight away.
Acting is quite effective after all.
Klein tapped his glabella and wiped away his sweat. He turned towards the altar, tapped his chest 4 times, and said out loudly,
Praise the lady.
Following that, he extinguished the candles and quickly tidied up the altar. Finally, he placed the items back into the desk and used his silver dagger to dispel the spirituality wall seal. Whoosh! The sound of the wind echoed before subsiding. Klein let out a long sigh of relief and felt a sense of lingering fear.
If I hadn't walked through the process beforehand and successfully completed the ritual, then things would have become troublesome. Besides, I still don't know who my opponent or enemy is. Thankfully, the room was carpeted, so I didn't damage my clothes while rolling.
He shook his head and reached out to open the wooden door to Selena's bedroom.
How was it?
Elizabeth took 2 steps back and asked nervously. Klein looked at her terrified expression and took off his half-top hat before saying with a warm smile,
I've already corrected the mistake of her magic mirror divination. It's been resolved now.
Chapter 87. Exhortation. Elizabeth asked in disbelief.
Has it really been resolved?
Klein smiled and nodded casually.
Memp, it wasn't too hard.
He added inwardly,
That last part was a lie.
Perhaps it was the fact that Klein had been calm and collected all this time. Or perhaps he was her only ray of hope. Either way, Elizabeth didn't doubt him anymore. She patted her chest and heaved a sigh of relief.
Thank you. You truly are a trustworthy gentleman. I was scared senseless just now. How is Selina? Is she fine now?
She might remain unconscious for the next few minutes, but she's completely fine now. Oh, 2 to 3 days of weakness is to be expected. Klein suddenly had a stern expression on his face as he asked,
Who taught her mysticism? Didn't he tell her about the basic taboos?
Elizabeth straightened up a little more like a student who had just been scolded by her teacher. She thought for a moment before saying,
Selina once mentioned that her teacher is Hannes Vincent. She met him a year ago at the Divination Club on Howe Street.
Hannes Vincent. On the surface, he didn't seem to teach anything questionable about magic mirror divination, but he's secretly been teaching dark divination. If I knew about this earlier, then I would have reported it to Captain and have raided him earlier. Klein felt some regret as he asked in a deep voice,
Was he also the one who taught Selina magic mirror divination?
Klein was left with a lingering sense of fear because this matter had nearly affected his sister, Melissa. Elizabeth nodded cautiously.
Yes, but Selina had tried magic mirror divination a few times without any success. Oh, today she told me that she had a peek at her teacher's hidden incantations, and that there would be no problems.
Klein massaged his temples to alleviate his headache.
She was basically an expert at courting death. Do you still remember the incantations she recited?
Although Hannes Vincent had not voluntarily imparted the dangerous knowledge to Selina, it's obvious that he had been experimenting with it to extend an invitation to a mysterious, unknown entity. This would become a problem sooner or later. It has to be dealt with quickly before it gets worse and becomes a problem for someone else. Elizabeth recalled,
I remember a part of it. She recited it in Hermes. As you know, I was only exposed to Hermes just recently. All I remember is her using the terms revolve, spirit, creator, and Chuar and grace.
Creator? The true creator? Many underground mysticism enthusiasts believe in this ancient entity revered by many secret organizations. Yes, an entity that appeared 1,000 years ago during the early stages of the Fifth Epoch. Klein nodded amidst his thought and said,
Remember to ask Selina about the entire incantation after she wakes up, then find an opportunity to tell me.
Elizabeth replied without any reservations, but she immediately asked, feeling a little confused,
Mr. Moretti, why don't you ask her yourself?
Klein asked in return.
I don't want to let Melissa know I enjoy mysticism. Can you help me keep that a secret?
Elizabeth bit her lips, her eyes sparkling.
No problem. Melissa prefers machines to mystery. She likes logic over instinct.
Klein placed his hat in front of his chest and bowed gentlemanly.
Thank you for your understanding. As for Selina, you do know that she's not someone who can keep a secret.
Elizabeth agreed.
A more accurate description is that she likes to share secrets with others.
Klein put on his hat and thought for a moment before saying,
Remember to tell Selina after she wakes up that she suddenly fainted and shattered her mirror. I think her memory probably stopped at the point when she began the magic mirror divination.
Seeing Elizabeth nod, he put on a stern expression once again and said,
Remember, be it divinations or trying other mysticism rituals, do not pray to any other entities other than the 7 orthodox divinities. You should immediately burn those types of incantations and stay far away from anyone distributing those materials. If I hadn't noticed this in time, Selina would have turned into a monster or an evil spirit in 10 minutes, and everyone here would have been killed, myself included.
Thinking about the ice-cold Selina in the mirror, Elizabeth had no doubts about what Klein had just said. She sighed with lingering fear and said,
I understand and I'll remember. I'll also keep an eye on Selina.
Klein raised his black cane and walked toward the stairway. As he walked, his eyes became darker. He took out a single penny with his right hand and flicked it into the air.
Selina is all right now. Selina is all right now.
Klein quickly repeated the description, then caught the falling coin. He saw George III's face facing upward. This was not a simplification of spirit dowsing. Instead, it was a simplification of dream divination. At that moment, Klein had forced himself into a state of sleep with the aid of cogitation in order to take a tour through the spirit world. The heads and tails of the coin were a symbolic manifestation. Heads represented affirmation, while tails indicated descent. Klein twirled the bronze coin with his fingers happily.
Great. Everything is fine now.
That was a simplification only a seer could accomplish. Elizabeth was staring at Klein's back and saw the flying coin before he caught it. Only when Klein vanished down the staircase did she turn to enter the bedroom. She saw Selina asleep on the floor with shattered pieces of the mirror beside her. She held her breath and tiptoed into the room as she looked at the fragments of the mirror. She made sure that the ice-cold Selina was no longer present. Instead, the fragments were reflecting the ceiling. Phew! Put completely at ease, Melissa heaved a long sigh of relief. But despite her efforts, she couldn't move Selina to the bed. Instead, she nudged her awake. Selina asked weakly, the glow in her eyes having turned considerably dull while her eyes were filled with confusion.
Elizabeth, what happened to me? Did I get drunk?
Elizabeth thought for a moment and replied in a serious tone.
No, Selina, something happened to you. Your magic mirror divination invited a malicious entity.
Selina weakly made her way to the bed with Elizabeth's help. She rubbed her temple as she said,
Is that so? All I remember is when I started the magic mirror divination.
Elizabeth told a half-truth.
You were a completely different person during the ritual. The you in the mirror was completely different from the you in real life. I was very scared. Using the excuse of giving you a surprise, I brought you into the bedroom before I snatched your mirror and shattered it onto the carpet. After that you fainted. Blessed be the goddess. You're okay now.
Selina muttered, her face pale.
I don't remember anything.
The more Selina tried to remember, the emptier her mind became, and the more afraid she felt. Subconsciously, she glanced at her desk and noticed that the placement of items was clearly different. Selina tried hard to remember, but she could only faintly remember a man in a black suit and hat. He was not strong or tall, but he had a straight back. Elizabeth said seriously,
Selina, I met a mysticism expert when I went to the underground market to purchase the amulet. He said that we shouldn't pray to any entity other than the 7 Orthodox divinities. Otherwise, we would be sure to invite disaster. Promise me, don't try this anymore. I didn't even know if what I did could save you just now.
Selina was scared senseless. She nodded in a daze.
No more. I'll never try this again.
Elizabeth asked, feigning nonchalance.
And just what did the incantations of your mysticism mean? If I have the chance to meet the mysticism expert again, I will ask him for you.
Selina rubbed her temple and said,
Spirit that revolves this world, the grace of the true creator, the eyes that look at fate.
Tap, tap, tap. Klein smoothed the creases and patted the dust off his clothes as he walked down the stairs. After that, he took off his hat and returned slowly to the long dining table. Selina's brother, Chris, asked as he folded his hand,
Where did you go? It has been nearly 10 minutes.
Klein smiled and replied,
To the bathroom, then upstairs to acquaint myself with the ladies.
Chris praised in laughter.
I appreciate your honesty.
He had the red hair and short build that ran in their family. He wore gold-framed glasses and had quite the personality. He was an exceptional lawyer. Klein replied humbly,
You wouldn't say that if you knew that I had knocked your sister unconscious upstairs. We were merely engaging in academic discussion.
In the area of mysticism, he put down his hat and returned to his seat. He received his 2 cards as the new round started. Flipping up the corner of his cards, he saw the King of Spades and the Ace of Diamonds. Klein took out a coin in preparation to place his bet.
Looks like I became luckier. Is this payback for doing a good deed? Since Hinas didn't intentionally reveal the incantation to Selina, There's no need for me to urgently report this to Captain.
He continued his cautious playstyle in the following rounds, only betting when he had a good hand. He didn't take any chances to bluff and didn't win much. When the game ended at 10:30, he had won 6 pence. Benson fiddled with the notes and coins in his hand.
I won 2 solely and 8 pence.
Klein praised, laughing.
I didn't expect you to be an expert at poker.
Benson hadn't finished his sentence when he saw Melissa and the rest coming down from the second floor. Klein glanced at his sister and her friends while rubbing his temples.
It's time to go home.
The throbbing pain in his head remained. After that, Klein went to the bathroom once more and took the opportunity to walk past Elizabeth and obtain the complete incantation. Returning to his siblings, he smiled and said,
Oh, right, I suddenly remembered something. I need to head back to the company for a while. Shall we go to Zutland Street first? It'll be quick.
Chapter 88, Report. Benson asked casually,
What is it?
Melissa looked at her brother with a serious expression because she felt that Klein's behavior tonight was strange as well. In fact, it only looked slightly more normal than Elizabeth's behavior and, later, Selena's. Klein chuckled as he had long thought of an excuse and said,
There was a mistake in one of the document descriptions, and I already informed my colleagues that I would hand it over to them when I arrive early at the company tomorrow morning. So I can either amend it now since it's on the way or wake up at least half an hour earlier tomorrow morning. No doubt I've chosen to do the former.
Benson smiled, suddenly enlightened.
Ah, no wonder. I had a nagging feeling that your mind wasn't in the game, so you were actually thinking about work. No, I apologize. I should say, the card game helped you think.
Melissa looked away and smoothed out the ruffles of her engaged aunties.
All right. We shall wait for you.
As it was past the operation time for both track and trackless public carriages, the 3 siblings bid their hosts farewell before hiring a carriage nearby. It cost 2 solely for 45 minutes. Benson complained in a low voice. He had used most of the money that he won earlier to pay the driver.
I've heard that every carriage driver that rents out their own carriage adds ridiculous fees.
Klein smiled and replied,
I think it's very acceptable. After all, it is almost 11 o'clock.
Benson looked out of the window at the other people who were hiring carriages one after another.
I was just joking. I thought that we could actually share the carriage with other guests. 45 minutes can take us to many places.
I know, ride-sharing.
Klein rubbed the top of his silver-inlaid walking stick and said,
We don't have a problem with that, but the other customers might. Benson, did you notice that they care a lot about their image? And at looking respectable? I think that might be common among the middle class.
Benson nodded seriously and said,
The Wood family was much more extravagant than I imagined. However, Wood's weekly salary is only £4 per week. Looking respectable might be the biggest difference between the middle-class people and curly-haired baboons.
Do you have something against curly-haired baboons?
Klein almost burst out laughing. Melissa didn't join in on their discussion. She took a seat and sized up Klein from time to time. Her gaze was sending chills down his spine. The 2-wheeled horse carriage was traveling quickly in the dark, quiet street. They arrived at Zoutland Street in only 12 minutes. Klein emphasized. He put on his top hat, grabbed his cane, and got off the carriage.
Wait for me here. 5 minutes, it won't be more than 5 minutes.
As the carriage driver was charging based on time instead of distance, the driver didn't mind waiting. Going up the stairs, Klein arrived at the Blackthorn Security Company and knocked on the door. Within 10 seconds, the door was opened wide. Leonard Mitchell appeared before him in a vest and shirt. Leonard pointed out, looking surprised to see him.
You're not on duty tonight.
Klein was only on guard duty once a week for the Chanis Gate. They maintained a regular work schedule for the rest of the time. As for emergencies that happened at night, they would be dealt with by the sleepless who enjoyed the night.
However, only getting 2 to 3 hours of sleep a day can cause baldness and memory loss.
Whenever he thought about this, Klein couldn't help to ridicule Captain Dunsmith in his mind. He answered simply,
I have something to report.
Leonard asked casually, moving aside.
There's a mission?
When Klein entered the reception hall, he saw Dunn coming out in his black trench coat. His gray eyes were dark as usual. Klein said,
Captain, I came across an incident involving the supernatural.
Dunn asked directly.
Give me the details.
Klein recounted the whole story from earlier and reported the steps that he took to deal with it.
So I think there's a need to investigate Hannes Vincent.
Back then, he believed that since the evil entity that was invited by the magic mirror divination hadn't caused a disaster, and there was no indication that he was in extreme danger, that meant that the entity probably still needed more time. It didn't want to awaken or possess Selena ahead of time. Therefore, as long as its goals were not exposed, the evil entity chose to observe the situation. Under such circumstances, it wasn't hard for Elizabeth to trick Selena to head to the entrance of the bedroom. Dunn lifted his head lightly and said,
You've done well. You seized the opportunity before the evil spirit fully materialized to possess her body completely. Let us take care of the follow-up investigations. You can return home to rest.
Klein heaved a sigh of relief and chortled.
I thought you would make this my initiation mission and make me complete it alone.
From the incantation that Elizabeth provided him, Hannes Vincent was certainly dangerous. The desultory Leonard chuckled by the side.
That's because there's already an initiation mission for you.
Klein was shocked.
What?
Dunn smirked and explained with his soothing voice.
At around 7 tonight, the police station referred us to a case. From our initial assessments, there doesn't seem to be any danger or urgency, so it was decided that you would complete it on your own tomorrow. All right, don't ask about the case. Rest well tonight, and move your day off to Tuesday or Wednesday.
Captain, doing that only affects my sleep. Plus, Monday afternoon is when the tarot gathering takes place. Do I need to send a postponement notification to Justice and the Hanged Man?
Klein shook his head and smiled bitterly. He then bade farewell and left. Exiting the stairway, he suddenly sensed something. He lifted his head to look towards the carriage that they had hired. He only saw Melissa looking at him silently through the window. When they made eye contact, Melissa suddenly looked away and sat properly. The corner of Klein's mouth twitched, and he got into the carriage, pretending nothing had happened. Under the crimson moon and pure night sky, the carriage moved quickly down one street after the other. When they returned home, Klein yielded the bathroom to Benson for his shower while he went to Melissa's bedroom and knocked twice. Melissa, who was planning to use the other bathroom, opened the door and looked at her brother suspiciously. Klein asked straightforwardly,
Melissa, do you have any questions that you'd like to ask? I know you do. Mauza David, don't just observe me in silence.
Melissa's lips trembled and creased her eyebrows as she spoke.
Klein, what did you do to Elizabeth? She seemed a bit off. And later on, Selena started acting very strange too.
Klein had prepared his reply.
Do you know that Elizabeth and Selena are mysticism enthusiasts?
Melissa answered seriously after being momentarily taken aback.
Yeah, but I don't like it. I don't think there's anything that can't be explained in this world. Anything that seems unexplainable is due to the fact that the knowledge we have grasped is insufficient.
Klein echoed her sentiments guiltily.
Yeah, I think so too. I once thought so too, until I successfully courted death.
He coughed lightly and continued.
Mysticism involves Hermes, the language used specifically for ancient worship ceremonies and prayers. Elizabeth knew that I am good at it. It is within a historian's domain after all. So she asked me about the pronunciation of corresponding words and their actual meanings.
Melissa nodded lightly, signifying her acceptance of her brother's explanation. It went according to her understanding of both parties. Klein removed himself from the picture first, then he said,
As for why Elizabeth and Selena became weird later on, I have no idea about the actual reasons, but I can make a guess.
Melissa blurted out in shock.
You managed to guess it?
Klein lifted his hand and patted his lips.
I could guess from the contents of what Elizabeth asked. The few Hermes words were related to divination, as well as the worshipping of evil entities. Yes, when Selena did the magic mirror divination, did she recite in Hermes?
He proactively brought that up in order to remind his sister to keep her guard up against similar situations. It would be even better if she could cut off contact with Selena and Elizabeth, Melissa replied after a delay.
Yes. I think I understand why Elizabeth and Selena were acting strange.
Then, Klein asked deliberately,
As Selena's magic mirror divination involved a wicked, illegal belief, perhaps Elizabeth found an opportunity to criticize and correct Selena's mistake after she clarified with me the actual meaning of the Hermes that Selena had used?
Melissa didn't doubt this conclusion because she had made the same deduction herself.
I think so.
Klein let out a breath of relief upon seeing that he had successfully directed the flow of the conversation.
In the future, it's best if you advise Selena to put her beliefs in the orthodox.
Then he tapped 4 spots on his chest just like a priest, Melissa replied, sounding determined.
Yes, I will.
Klein emphasized.
And don't tell Elizabeth and Selena about our deduction or about the things that I've said. I actually promise Elizabeth not to tell you.
Melissa nodded lightly.
Okay.
On Monday morning at 8, in the Blackthorn Security Company, Klein took off his hat and greeted Roseanne and Brett. After exchanging a few words, he entered Captain Dunsmith's office. He pushed the door open and looked around. He suddenly had a shock because Dunn's face was pretty pale and his gray eyes looked clouded without their usual darkness. Klein asked in concern and shock.
What happened, Hanas, Vincent?
Dunn rubbed his forehead, took a sip of coffee, and replied with a bitter smile.
Hanas Vincent is dead.
Klein sat before Dunn with his cane in hand.
Who killed him ahead of time?
Dunn didn't answer immediately, but sighed and said,
Leonard and I went to look for Hanas Vincent last night. As his usual behavior didn't show any unusual signs and there was nothing odd about his house, I decided to enter his dreams to look for clues. In his dream.
His eyes showed fear as Dunn repeated himself twice. That was when he said,
In his dream, I saw a cross. A huge cross, one that blotted out the sky. On the huge cross, there was a naked man nailed to it with black nails. His arms and legs were pinned with his arms extended outwards. He was hung upside down, his head hung low like a chandelier. There was strips of bloodstains on his body. Upon seeing such a scene, I lost consciousness. I left Hanas Vincent's dream, and when I woke up, Leonard told me that Hanas had died in his sleep.
Klein made a deduction in suspicion.
Huge cross, hung upside down, the man covered in bloodstains. It's similar to some of the stories of the true creator that some of the hidden organizations believe in, but there are considerable differences too.
The few hidden organizations that believed in the true creator had only appeared in the last 2 or 3 centuries, such as the Aurora Order and the Iron and Blood Cross Order. However, similar such depictions had never disappeared over the past 1,000+ years. Dunn rubbed his forehead again.
We'll follow up on this. As for you, go ahead and complete your initiation mission first.
Chapter 89. A Simple Mission. Klein nodded and said,
All right, but I still don't know what my mission is.
Nothing dangerous. I haven't seen any signs of danger at the very least.
Dunn emphasized.
This is a case which was referred to us by Golden Indus's police department. The famous philanthropist Sir Deweyville has been experiencing unusual harassment over the past month. Be it his bodyguards, the security guards he has employed, or the police, none of them have been able to find the culprit. Inspector Tolle, who is in charge of this case, suspects that it involves beyond her powers and, thus, handed the case over to us.
I saw Sir Deweyville at the library the other day, and noticed that he was feeling down and lethargic. So it was a result of being harassed.
Klein knitted his brows and asked,
"What kind of harassment is it?"
"There hasn't been any physical harm inflicted yet. Thus, the harassment wouldn't be considered dangerous."
Sir Deweyville hears moans and cries every night, no matter where he is, be it Tingen or not. This has affected his sleep quality negatively.
Dunn flipped the notes in his hands.
He has seen a psychiatrist and has asked his butlers and servants to confirm that it was not an illusion. Having confirmed that it isn't a hallucination, thus, it is suspected that someone is harassing him.
Closing the file, Dunn looked up at Klein.
Change into your probationary inspector uniform in the break room, then meet Inspector Tolle, who is in charge of this case at the shooting club. He'll provide you with more details.
Probationary inspector uniform?
Klein asked instinctively. Dunn rubbed his forehead and smiled.
Half of our salary comes from the police department, and the title of probationary inspector doesn't merely belong in the records. When you met Leonard and I for the first time, we were also wearing uniforms. This is a perk held by fully official members. Yes, the perks, as Emperor Roselle would call it.
Unfortunately, I can't wear it as a casual outfit. Otherwise, I'd be able to have another spare outfit when my clothes are being washed.
Klein picked up his cane and bade farewell before leaving the captain's office. He headed toward the break room and saw a black and white checkered uniform, complete with leather boots, placed on the table. The uniform's peak cap was embroidered with the logo of the police department, 2 crossed swords, and a crown. Located on the shoulder was a black and white epaulet with a shimmering silver star.
This is a probationary inspector uniform?
Klein glanced at the uniform and noticed a string of numbers under the silver stars, 06-254. He had some understanding of the police rank structure in the Lowen Kingdom. He knew that those at the top were the minister and the chief secretary of the police force. Under them were the respective commissioners, deputy commissioners, assistant commissioners of the various police departments. Those in the middle were superintendents and inspectors, while those at the very bottom were the sergeants and constables. After closing the door, Klein took off his suit and hat before changing into the uniform. Pakes. He hung his suit up and left the room. He made his way into the clerk's office and looked at himself using the full-body mirror that Roseanne brought to him. The young man in the mirror had black hair with gentle brown eyes. The uniform on his body accentuated him with a heroic spirit.
Not bad.
Klein praised himself narcissistically. He left his cane in the office and left the Blackthorn Security Company. Inside his pockets were a full set of equipment, ranging from weapons to his police badge. At the hall of the shooting club, Klein met Inspector Tolle immediately since he was the only one in a police uniform.
Of course, there's me too,
Klein thought suddenly. There were 2 silver stars on the epaulets of Inspector Tolle's uniform. His clothes were propped up by his stomach and he had a thick blonde mustache. His frame was tall but not imposing. Perhaps it was imposing in the past.
Moretti? Klein Moretti?
Inspector Tolle noticed Klein and welcomed him with a smile.
Hello, Inspector Tolle. I believe that you have the right person.
Klein replied amicably. Then, following his memories, he raised his right arm, kept his fingers straight and tight before saluting. Tolle chuckled.
I can tell that you'll be a young man who's easy to get along with. That's good. Shall we head to Sir Deweyville's place now?
Even though he was a higher rank than Klein, the tone in his query was obviously friendly.
No problem.
Klein thought for a moment before he said,
You can fill me in on the details of the case on the carriage.
Sure. Tolle stroked his thick blonde beard and guided Klein out of the shooting club. They boarded a carriage which was stopped on the other side of the road. There was the 2 crossed swords and a Crown Police emblem on the carriage, and it came with a personal carriage driver.
Sir Deweyville is a believer of the goddess, so we referred the case to you,
Tolle said quickly as he sat down.
I know. The fine knight is a common figure on the covers of newspapers and magazines.
Klein flashed a friendly smile. Tolle picked up the document docket beside him and removed the seal before taking out the materials inside. As he flipped through them, he explained,
Regardless, even if you are aware of it, I need to provide you with the detailed briefing. Sir Deweyville is one of the richest tycoons of Tingen City. He built his career beginning with a lead and porcelain factory. It has now expanded to steel, coal, shipping, banking, and bonds. He is also a great philanthropist that has been praised by the king, having set up the Deweyville Charity Foundation, the Deweyville Trust, and the Deweyville Library. He was also knighted 5 years ago. If he were willing to run for mayor, I don't think anyone in Tingen City could contest with him. But Backland is his goal. He wants to become a member of parliament. We once suspected that the harassment might be related to this, but we have no clues to this date.
Klein nodded slightly and said,
We can't rule out that possibility, but there's nothing to confirm that suspicion as of now.
Tolle didn't dwell on this point. He continued,
From the 6th of last month, Sir Deweyville has heard painful, skin-numbing moans every night when he sleeps, akin to a patient's fight for his life. He has checked the surrounding rooms multiple times, but he hasn't found anything unusual. His butler and servants have also confirmed that they heard such sounds, but it is simply softer for them. In the beginning, Sir Deweyville believed that this matter would pass quickly and didn't pay too much attention to it. But the moans became more and more frequent, to the point of occasionally happening during the day. There was even the addition of heart-wrenching cries. This has made Sir Deweyville lose sleep. Time and time again he had no choice but to leave Tingen to his villa in the villages. But it was to no avail. The moans and cries persisted. Similarly, the phenomenon persisted even in Backland, just that it wasn't as serious. He employed security guards to check his surroundings, but they didn't find any clues. Our preliminary investigations also came up with nothing. Sir Deweyville, who has been tortured for more than a month, is on the brink of collapse. He visited psychiatrists time and time again but was unable to have his problems resolved. He told us that if this problem was not solved within a month, he would leave Tingen and head to Backland. He believes that there would be people who can help him there.
After listening to Tolle's explanation, Klein quickly analyzed and came up with a few possibilities.
He offended a beyonder and is suffering from a curse? No, if he was suffering from a curse, the butlers and servants in his house wouldn't hear the same things. There's a beyonder with unknown motives hidden among his servants and bodyguards. But the problem stems from the point that there has been no requests made of Sir Deweyville over the past month. Perhaps Sir Deweyville accidentally came into contact with some vengeful, evil spirit. That possibility cannot be ruled out.
The carriage entered the Golden Indus borough while Klein was still deep in thought. It stopped at the door of Sir Deweyville's house. A steel fence surrounded a lush garden. There were 2 statues by the side of the hollowed metal gates, a magnificent fountain that showered a marble sculpture with water, an expansive 2-story building, as well as a path wide enough to fit 3 carriages.
Even the knight's house is only 2 stories high. The newspaper reported that Backland is experimenting with building 10-story apartments.
Klein got off the carriage and saw a sergeant with 3 chevron stripes walking over briskly. He looked at Klein and saluted.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning.
Klein nodded with a smile. Ooh, Tolle smiled.
This is Sergeant Gate. You can tell him if you need anything. This is Probationary Inspector Moretti, a history and psychological expert from the police department.
Tolle introduced Klein to Gate.
I don't deserve such a title.
Klein felt a little embarrassed. After the greetings, Gate pointed to the 2-story building behind the fountain and said,
Sir Deweyville is waiting for us.
All right.
Klein caressed the revolver at his waist. That was his best bet against an enemy. Since he was in police uniform, he could put his revolver in a holster at his hip, making it easier to draw it. As they spoke, the trio made their way down the path, around the fountain, and arrived outside the door. By then, the door was already opened by a servant who was waiting politely at the side. As Klein pretended to adjust his hat, he tapped twice on his glabella to activate his spirit vision before entering the house. The square-faced Sir Deweyville was massaging his forehead in the hall. He was clearly in low spirits. His blonde hair and blue eyes were either dry or dull, as though he had aged considerably by at least 5 years.
Good morning, Sir Deweyville.
Klein, Tolley, and Gate bowed at the same time. Sir Deweyville stood up and forced out a smile.
Good morning, officers. I hope that you can resolve what has been causing me distress.
At that moment, Klein squinted and slightly knitted his brows. Other than his low spirits, Klein couldn't find any other problems with Sir Deweyville.
That's odd.
He thought for a moment before he said,
Sir, in which room did you first hear the moans?
My bedroom.
Sir Deweyville shook his head.
Can we take a look?
Inquired Klein.
Haven't you checked it many times?
The middle-aged butler interrupted from the side. It was clear that he didn't notice that Klein was the partner of the kind-hearted soul that had not pocketed the money that he picked up. Klein smiled, composed.
Those were my colleagues, not me.
Sir, this is an expert sent by the police agency.
Tolley said, taking the opportunity to introduce him. Deweyville looked at the young expert and said,
All right, Cullen, take him to my room.
Sir, I hope that you will come with us.
Klein said seriously. Deweyville hesitated for a few seconds before saying,
If that can solve the problem.
He grabbed his cane as he spoke. He made his way feebly toward the staircase, with the butler Cullen and several guards beside him, ready to support him if needed. Klein surveyed the surroundings as he followed behind them silently. 1 step, 2 steps, 3 steps. They arrived at the 2nd story and entered the master bedroom. Klein didn't have the time to survey the surroundings when the hair on his body stood on their ends. This was feedback from his spiritual perception. Chapter 90, Findings by Sight. Sir Deweyville's bedroom was larger than the living room and dining room of Klein's house combined. It was partitioned into a place for a bed, a living space, a changing room, a bathroom, and a study desk and bookshelves. The furnishings were exquisite, and the details were extravagant, but to Klein the light seemed dimmer and the temperature was several degrees colder than the outside. At the same time, he seemed to hear the sound of sobbing and moaning as though one was putting up a last-ditch struggle. Klein was in a trance, and everything suddenly returned to normal. The sunlight shone brightly through the window and poured over the entire bedroom. The temperature was reasonable, neither too high nor low. The surrounding policemen, bodyguards, and butler were quiet. No one spoke.
This.
He looked sideways at the classic yet luxurious bed. He felt there were pairs of blurry eyes lingering in the shadow, like the moths that fearlessly stayed around gas lamps. Taking a few steps closer, Klein lost the earlier images from his spirit vision.
Not a standard wraith or an evil spirit. What is it exactly?
Klein frowned and recalled the mysticism knowledge that he had been learning all this time. From what he had seen, the mission would have been easy if it was passed to a corpse collector, gravedigger, or spirit medium. It was obviously not within his domain of expertise. Holding back his urge to use divination as an investigative approach, Klein looked around slowly to look for other traces to confirm the few guesses on his mind. Sir Deweyville hesitated and asked,
Did you discover anything?
Klein replied, glancing at the philanthropist subconsciously.
If it were that easy, I believe my colleagues wouldn't have waited until now.
Just as he planned to retract his gaze, he suddenly saw that there was a faint, white human figure reflected behind Sir Deweyville in the mirror behind him. No, there were many figures overlapping each other, resulting in a white, distorted figure. The figure flashed by, and Klein seemed to hear faint sobbing. Phew! He let out a breath to ease his nerves, having almost drawn his gun out of fright.
Heightened spiritual perception with spirit vision will one day scare me senseless.
Klein tried relaxing his tense nerves by joking around before redirecting his focus back onto Sir Deweyville. This time, he saw something different. Now that he was in the bedroom, Sir Deweyville had a faint and twisted figure shimmering around him. It even dimmed the lighting of that area. Every flash was accompanied by an illusionary cry and moan that could hardly be detected by an ordinary person.
Hardly audible for an ordinary person under ordinary circumstances? Is it because it's daytime?
Klein nodded as he thought. He had an initial judgment for this case. It was resentment that was haunting Sir Deweyville. It was the remnant spirituality that resulted from unresolved emotions before a human's death. If such feelings of resentment stayed in this world over a period of time, they would become a terrifying, wrathful spirit after becoming stronger.
However, Sir Deweyville was a famous philanthropist. Even Benson, who was a picky person, was in awe of him. Why would he be bogged down with the resentment of the dead? Is he actually two-faced? Could it be the means of a beyonder with nefarious intentions?
Klein guessed the possibilities suspiciously. After some thought, he looked towards Deweyville and asked,
Honorable Sir, I have a few questions.
Deweyville sat down wearily.
Please, ask.
Klein organized his thoughts and asked,
When you leave here to go to a new place, such as the village or backland, do you temporarily get at least half a night's worth of peace before the situation resumes and gradually worsens? Even when you sleep during the daytime, are you able to hear moaning and sobbing sounds?
Deweyville's half-closed eyes suddenly widened as his deep blue eyes were suddenly beaming with hope.
Yes. Did you find the root of the problem?
Only then did he realize that, due to his extended period of insomnia and his poor mental state, he had completely forgotten to inform the police about such an important clue. Seeing that Klein's question had uncovered something useful, Inspector Tolley relaxed. He knew that the Nighthawk had found a clue. Sergeant Gate was surprised and curious too. He couldn't help but look closely at the psychological expert, Klein.
It coincided with the traits of gradual entanglement and the feature of accumulation.
Having received the feedback, Klein had basically confirmed the cause. Then, he had two ways of helping Sir Deweyville to shake off the burden. One was to set up an altar directly around the man and remove the resentment of the dead, entirely using ritualistic magic. The second option was to use other mysticism measures to find the root of the problem and solve it from there. Taking into consideration the rule of preventing commoners from learning of beyonder powers to the best of his abilities, Klein planned on first attempting the second method. Only if it failed would he pray to the goddess Besta. He spoke nonsense with absolute seriousness while looking at Deweyville.
Sir, yours is a psychological illness, a mental problem.
Sir Deweyville knitted his brows and asked in reply,
Are you telling me that I'm a mental patient, that I need to enter an asylum?
Klein casually comforted him.
No, nothing that serious. Actually, most people have psychological problems to one degree or another. Please allow me to introduce myself again. I am a psychological expert from the Owl County Police.
Deweyville and his butler looked at Inspector Tolley, who they were familiar with. Tolley nodded seriously and confirmed that it was true.
All right. What do you need of me for my treatment? Besides, I don't understand why my butler, my bodyguards, and my servants will hear the sobbing and moaning as well.
Deweyville held his walking stick with both hands, looking confused. Klein replied professionally,
I will explain it to you after it's resolved. Please tell your butler, your servants, and your bodyguards to leave. Inspector Tolley, Sergeant Gate, please leave as well. I need a quiet environment to begin the initial treatment.
A treatment with magic.
Inspector Tolley added in his heart and nodded at Sir Deweyville. Deweyville fell silent for more than 10 seconds before saying,
Cullen, take them to the living room on the second floor.
Butler Cullen didn't retort, since the request was made by a police officer, a probationary inspector, and a psychological expert.
Yes, sir.
After watching them leave the room one after another and closing the door behind them, Klein looked at Deweyville, who had dark blonde hair and blue eyes, and said,
Sir, please lie down on your bed. Relax and try to sleep.
Deweyville hung his coat and hat on the clothes rack before walking slowly to the side of the bed and then lay down.
All right.
Klein drew all the curtains, turning the room dark. He took off his pendant and quickly used spirit pendulum to determine any dangers. Then, he sat on the rocking chair near the end of the bed, traced a spherical light in his mind, and entered cogitation. He allowed the world of spirituality to extend before his eyes. Then, he leaned against the back of the chair and fell into a deep sleep, allowing for his astral projection to make contact with the external world. He was using the technique of dream divination, to let himself be in the spiritual environment like he was dreaming, so as to communicate with each and every resentment that plagued Sir Deweyville. Only communication would be able to give him an answer and solve the problem. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. A sad sob reverberated in Klein's ear, and he saw that the white translucent figures were floating around him. A painful groan echoed as Klein, who barely regained his mental processes, extended his right hand and touched one of them. Suddenly, the figures swarmed at him like moths darting toward a fire. The image before Klein's eyes suddenly turned blurry, and his brain seemed to be cleaved into two. Half of his mind was calmly observing, while the other half saw a mirror. In the mirror, there was a young girl dressed in worker garbs. She looked strong and fit as she walked in a dust-covered factory while her head throbbed in pain. Her eyesight occasionally turned blurry, and her body became skinnier by the day. She seemed to hear someone calling her Charlotte, and the voice said that she had a hysterical illness.
Hysterical illness?
She looked towards the mirror and saw that she had a faint blue line on her gum. The mirror's view switched, and Klein saw another girl called Mary. She too walked into the lead factory, young and lively. Suddenly, half of her face started twitching, followed by her arm and leg on the same side. "Ampatagal," she heard someone say while her whole body was convulsing. "You have epilepsy." Ampatagal. As she twitched and fell, the intensity increased before she finally lost consciousness. There was another girl, and she was depressed. She was walking around the street in a daze, to the point of having a speech impediment. She had a very bad headache, and she had a blue line on her gums. She would also convulse from time to time. She met a doctor, and the doctor said,
"Lafayette, this is a result of lead poisoning."
The doctor looked at her with pity and saw her convulse again. She twitched continuously, and the doctor saw that her eyes had lost all their light. Many images appeared before Klein, and he remained immersed within them and calmly observed. Suddenly, he understood the plight of the girls. The female workers had been in extended contact with white lead. They had all died of lead poisoning as a result of long-term exposure to the dust and powder. Sir Deweyville had a lead factory under his name and also 2 porcelain factories. All of them hired comparatively cheaper female workers. Klein saw all of that in silence and felt that there was something that still had not been clarified. Such death resentment was insignificant. They could not affect reality or have any effect on Deweyville, even when accumulated.
Unless there was a more powerful and stubborn resentment that had united them all.
Just then he saw another girl. The girl was no more than 18 years old, but she was glazing the porcelain in the factory. An elder lady asked with concern,
"Haley, how are you doing lately? Do you still have a headache? If it gets too serious, remember to inform me. Sir Deweyville has enforced a rule that people with severe headaches cannot continue being in contact with lead and must leave the factory."
Haley touched her forehead and replied with a smile.
"Just a little. I'm okay."
The elderly lady exhorted.
"Tell me tomorrow if it gets any worse."
Haley agreed. When she returned home, she massaged her forehead from time to time. She saw that her parents and brother had returned, but their faces looked hopeless. Her mother said as she wiped her tears,
Your father and brother lost their jobs.
Her father and brother hung their heads low and muttered.
We will try to get some work at the harbor.
But we don't even have bread money for the day after tomorrow. Maybe we will need to move to Lower Street.
Haley's mother looked at her with reddened eyes.
When are you getting your pay? It's 10 solely, right?
Haley massaged her forehead again.
Yeah, Saturday. Saturday.
She didn't say anything else and remained as quiet as usual. She returned to the factory the next day and told her supervisor that her headache recovered and she felt fine. She smiled and walked 5 kilometers back and fro to work daily. She massaged her head more and more frequently. Koganai dia. Haley couldn't help but ask her father and brother, while looking at the soup, which was boiling with black bread.
You haven't found another job?
Her father said in frustration.
The economy is in a recession, many places are retrenching, even the harbor jobs are sporadic. I could only get 3 solely and 7 pence a week.
Haley sighed and fell into her usual silence. However, she hid her left hand that was twitching suddenly. On the second day, she walked to work again. The sun was shining brightly, and the street grew busier and busier with pedestrians. Suddenly, she started convulsing all over. She fell to the side of the road, foam spewing out of her mouth. She looked up into the sky and her gaze turned into a blur. She saw people walking past and others getting close. She saw a carriage pass by with the Deweyville family emblem, with a white dove with its spread wings as if ready to take off. She tried hard to open her mouth, but she couldn't make a sound, so she didn't say a thing, quiet as ever. But the difference this time was that she was dead.